ask you, did you watch the Vice documentary, Who Killed WCW, that came out last month or
I
earlier this
did
month?
I did not watch it, but I have, I listened to some commentary on people who did,
Right,
and I watched it happen in real time. So,
right. So who do you and look, this is something I'm sure we've touched on a couple times and on many of the podcasts we've done. We've probably talked around the topic a little bit. Um, but in your opinion, who do you think is fully responsible for the demise of WCW?
um, well, I think there are a number of people to blame.
So there's a pie chart then.
Yeah. So
Math guy, here we go.
yeah. So I think Bischoff has to take some of it because,
Yeah.
well, I think what happened, he got put into a management job for a thing that got was way bigger than I think he was prepared to do. When he took over, they were a much smaller operation. They were floundering. Um, and then everything exploded. And I don't think and look, he'll tell you himself that he made a bunch of mistakes.
Oh yeah, which he
Right.
has.
Yeah, and but I think just he was not equipped to manage all of that. And to manage, and look those guys. Hogan took advantage of him. Hall and Nash took advantage of him.
Yeah.
Um, I mean those three in particular. And so I
Hmm.
think he bears some of that. He bears some of that locker room situation becoming as untenable as it did. Um, I think whoever it was that hired Vince Russo, I mean, because Vince Russo was just like he had all these wacky, crazy ideas, and and when he was working in WWE, of course, it got filtered, and he didn't get to do just whatever he wanted, right? And when he went to WCW, he was given much more free reign, and so he did a bunch of stuff that just did not fly. So he gets some of the heat for it. Um, and people, I think you can go back to Jim Hurd, who was there in charge when Turner first bought it, because
Hmm.
one of the things that happened, like no, the whole time they were in existence, they kept trying to kind of walk away from who their core fan base was. They were Jim Crockett Promotions was a Southern-based wrestling promotion. It's Virginia, Carolinas, Georgia, right? And they went up to Maryland as far as Maryland and
Hmm.
in Philadelphia, but it was mostly a Southern-based promotion. And there's certain cultural sensibilities and what have you, and their audience, they just kept walking away from trying to walk away from that audience, and it haunted them the entire time. And Vince Russo was just kind of the worst manifestation of it, but because he like literally did not care about the actual wrestling aspect of it.
No, not at all.
And like, if you want a prime example of how to touch, there was this faction called the West Texas Rednecks, and this was around the time they brought in Master P, to be part of the show, and he had a couple of guys who were like, they were No Limit Soldiers, and they were wrestling on the WCW shows, and they were feuding with the West Texas Rednecks, and who had this, some like Master P and his guys, they were, you know, had they made a couple of songs and were rapping and all that, and the West Texas Rednecks, they came up with this,
Rappers crap.
counter to yeah, right,
Yeah,
and it's funny because
yeah.
the West Texas Red Kurt Hennig was one of the West Texas
I remember that. Yes, I
Rednecks.
remember that.
And what happened is they got over it. They got over it
They did.
because why? Because WCW is based in the South,
Yep.
and I mean, and granted, I mean, look, Master P's from New Orleans, so he's not a Yankee, right? But I mean, you know, some good old country boy singing rap is crap. It, you should have known better than to think that those guys were going to be the heels.
Let me ask you a question. Are you a Vince Russo fan at all?
No.
A lot of people like to shit on him though, but I don't know if it's
Um.
more than just the.
Well, I'll say there's one thing there's one thing that I think he did right, and that is he found the way to he found a way to use everybody. Like everybody got on TV with him.
He utilized in other words, he utilized the roster,
Yeah,
maximized the
so
roster.
that is the one thing I will give him credit for doing. Um, but the way I mean, but the stuff he did with those people was no. I mean,
And
but
it's so weird because I follow him on social media and like he's like, I'm so done with wrestling and this and that and wrestling this and that. And I'm like, but yet you still talk about it all the time. Like you sit there and say, wrestling's not my life, except you literally have a platform where you have all the former wrestlers on your platform. Most of your shows are all based off of wrestling itself, whether current or before. So you can't sit there and say that you're not about that stuff at all when literally all your content is all based off of that. Your fame is all based off of that. Like why lie about it? Let's lean into it. Be honest about it.
yes, exactly. And I mean, look, he's no different than all these other guys who were in the business who have a podcast now.
Yeah, exactly. Stop. Be authentic about it. Just lean into it. Be
Yeah,
honest.
and so I think look, he bears part of it. Yeah, so him, Bischoff, Jim Hurd, because like Jim Hurd ran off Ric Flair in 1991,
Yeah.
right? Um, and he ran off some other people. He like you know Bill Watts, because Bill Watts ran off Paul Heyman, who at the time Paulie dangerously.
So basically, you and I on the same page. Basically, a death by a thousand cuts.
Oh yeah, and it's just yeah, it was just yeah, exactly. And then now obviously the Turner people are the ones who put the bullet in.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the Turner folks get most of the blame because at the end of the day, if they wanted to fix it, they could have fixed it. I mean,
Absolutely.
it was still a profitable product. It could have still made money.
Yeah, and
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean they would. I mean you would. Yes, I mean they would. They needed to scale down, the roster because they still had all
Of
those people
course.
that
But it
guaranteed
was a
money.
fixable. I mean, look, even though WWE came back, it was a question on the ratings at some point. Was that WCW was doing shit ratings? It was still doing good ratings, but it was nowhere where it was 2 3 years prior.
Right. Well, look,
But
they were doing 2 million viewers when they got canceled. Which
yeah, like
I mean,
which back then was still a lot.
like if Raw was doing 2 million viewers every week now, they'd be popping champagne every week.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and I mean, there are reasons, obviously, that, and we don't need to go through all that why, you know, but still, they weren't, but 2 million viewers was nothing to sniff at back for cable, was nothing to sniff at back then either. Like 2 million viewers for basic cable, even though it was down from what they were.
5 6 million. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was still a really good number for basic cable in 2001.
But had they had people to actually fix the product, like because you can tell it was disorganized. And to me, the signs for me, like from a creative point of view, they were disorganized was when they did the whole Wolfpack angle and twin the NWO. Once they consolidated the NWO, it got too big, and they went to the point of splitting it down. Yeah, the rating was still pretty good, but that's why I knew like, yeah, this is a problem. The creative here ain't good. Like Goldberg's fine, holding up well, but beyond that, Goldberg was the last vestige of anything worth a damn in the company in '98. By the end of '98, that thing was pretty much on the way down.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it's just that one, and because well, they didn't land well because Hogan pulled his shenanigans at Starrcade, and I mean he was supposed to just lose straight up to Sting, and he pulled his shenanigans.
Creative card, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I mean that didn't help because that totally just kind of gummed up the works.
absolutely.
But I mean, yeah, they should have ended the NWO and um, Hall and Nash, could have just they could have done their thing. They could have stayed together and done their thing. Maybe and had one or two people with them, and Hogan could have had one or two guys with him. But they should have ended the NWO, but they let them around too long. So yeah, so as far as blame, um, I give a lot to Jim Herd because he's the one that screwed it up in the first place. Um, Bischoff just again wasn't equipped to manage what it turned into under his watch.
Yeah, his book got a little I would say stale, but got a little shitty to the end.
Oh yeah, because um, and then Russo was just completely out of touch with what their core fan base wanted.
Yeah,
And again, like I said, that was a problem ever since from the time Turner bought them from Jim Crockett. Um, so I think I mean, if I had to pick people, I'd be those three: Jim Herd, Bischoff, Russo, and then the Turner people at the end.
yeah. Um,